The moment Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor stepped onto the gravel at Marsh Farm, the silence was reportedly broken by a shout of pure, unrestrained fury. For a man who spent decades commanding a 30-room palace, the sight of a modest 5-bedroom farmhouse wasn't a fresh start. It was an insult. Witnesses describe a royal meltdown as he paced the perimeter, realizing that the luxury carpets and modern satellite TV were just gilded bars in a high-security cage. This isn't just a house he hates, it's a living symbol of how far he's fallen. But as the staff begin to quit and the high-security fences go up, many are wondering, is this farmhouse a temporary retreat, or is it the final stop in a plan to make the former prince disappear forever? Witnesses on the Sandringham estate say the air turned cold the second the car door opened. This wasn't the arrival of a prince, it was the arrival of a man who realized, perhaps for the first time, that he was no longer in control. Andrew didn't just walk toward Marsh Farm, he confronted it. Reports suggest the property inspection quickly descended into what insiders call a seismic display of frustration. To the public, it's a renovated 5-bedroom farmhouse. To Andrew, it's a 30-room downgrade that feels more like a high-security containment zone than a home. The transition was never supposed to be this public, but the tension was impossible to hide. As he moved through the rooms, checking every corner with a critical, unsettled eye, it became clear that the modern interiors and fresh paint couldn't mask the reality of his situation. He was a man accustomed to the sprawling grandeur of Royal Lodge, where every hallway whispered of his status. Here, the walls felt tight. The air felt thin. One witness claimed his reaction was closer to a tantrum than a simple property check, a desperate pushback against a fate that had already been decided behind the closed doors of Buckingham Palace. But it wasn't just the size of the house that sent him into a spiral. It was what he saw when he looked out the windows. Marsh Farm isn't just secluded, it's isolated. For years, the move had been discussed in quiet whispers, a slimming down of the monarchy that many thought would never actually happen to him. Yet, as he stood in the Norfolk countryside, staring at the perimeter that would now define his world, the physical evidence of his exile became undeniable. The grand gates of his former life haven't just closed, they've been locked from the outside. Every detail of this farmhouse, from the enhanced security systems to the rural silence, screams one thing: distance. Distance from the king, distance from the spotlight, and most importantly, distance from the power he once held as a central figure of the royal family. But as the movers began unloading the first boxes, an even darker realization began to surface among those watching from the sidelines. Because while the world was focused on the house, a much more dangerous conflict was brewing over who exactly gave the order to move him, and what they were willing to do to ensure he never came back. The move to Marsh Farm wasn't just a change of address, it was the final, brutal execution of a royal eviction that many believed would never actually happen. To the outside world, this 5-bedroom farmhouse on the Sandringham estate looks like a quiet, rural retreat. But for a man who spent 20 years inside the 30-room luxury of Royal Lodge, it feels like a high-security containment zone. Insiders report that the renovations were far from standard. While workers installed luxury carpets and modern satellite TV, they were also busy erecting 6-foot wooden perimeter fences and high-speed CCTV cameras that monitor every single inch of the property. The most chilling detail: a permanent no-fly zone was reportedly extended over the farm, specifically to prevent drones from capturing the reality of life inside the walls. It's a level of security that doesn't just feel like protection. It feels like an attempt to make the former prince vanish from public view entirely. The transition has been anything but smooth. Rumors have surfaced that the king's henchman, Prince Edward, had to be dispatched to Wood Farm just weeks ago to personally ensure Andrew finally upped sticks and vacated the property. He had reportedly been dragging his heels for months, creating a massive rift within the family that ruined the royals' traditional Easter holiday. And then there's the house itself. Built on swampy, low-lying land near the North Sea, the property is a constant target for flooding and, more recently, a severe pest infestation. Reports of swarms of mice and dozens of molehills across the front lawn have turned his new sanctuary into a living nightmare. For a man who lived his entire life in palaces, the reality of dealing with rural pests and flood alerts is a staggering personal come-down. One royal author recently described Marsh Farm in the harshest terms possible: the most luxurious open prison in the UK. And as the security gates lock behind him every night, the world is beginning to realize that the former Duke of York isn't just moving into a new house. He's moving into a permanent state of internal exile. But as he settles into this sedentary life of dog walking and television, a new and far more dangerous scandal is beginning to leak from the very palace he was just forced to leave. The king didn't just sign a moving order, he effectively signed a decree of total erasure. Behind the closed doors of the palace, the whispers have shifted from concern to a cold, calculated strategy. This isn't just about a house, it's about the final dismantling of a royal identity. For decades, Andrew was protected by the firm, but in early 2026, the shield didn't just crack, it shattered. Reports are surfacing that his final remaining titles, those tiny threads connecting him to his former life, have been quietly deleted from the official royal website overnight. He isn't just moving to the margins, he's being edited out of history. The real tension, however, isn't coming from the king. It's coming from the man waiting in the wings. Prince William has reportedly taken a zero-tolerance stance on his uncle's presence near the crown. Insiders claim William views Andrew as a permanent shadow over the monarchy's future, and the move to Marsh Farm was his ultimate ultimatum. The message was clear. There is no room for the past in the future King's Court. This power struggle has turned the royal corridors into a battlefield, leaving Andrew as a casualty of a war he never saw coming. But the most mysterious part of this exile involves the woman who has stood by him through everything. Sarah Ferguson, the Duchess of York, has long been his secret weapon for public sympathy. Yet, as the boxes arrived at Marsh Farm, Sarah was noticeably absent. Rumors are swirling that she has been offered a separate peace by the palace, a chance to maintain her own standing, provided she finally distances herself from the man she's defended for 30 years. If she leaves, he won't just be in exile. He'll be completely alone. The walls of the farmhouse are thick, but they aren't soundproof. Neighbors near the Sandringham estate have reported seeing blacked-out SUVs arriving at odd hours, sparking frantic speculation about who is still willing to visit the man the world has turned its back on. Is he building a new private network away from the cameras? Or are these visits from the very people tasked with ensuring he stays silent? As the isolation deepens, it's becoming clear that Marsh Farm might not be a home at all, but a waiting room for a much more permanent departure from the United Kingdom, one that could change everything we think we know about the royal family. The farmhouse at Marsh Farm was supposed to be a sanctuary, but it has quickly turned into a high-stakes pressure cooker that threatens to blow the royal family apart. While the public sees a man settling into a quiet retirement, those behind the palace walls describe a desperate search for an exit strategy that doesn't involve the UK at all. Rumors are reaching a fever pitch that Andrew has been making late-night, encrypted calls to long-standing contacts in the Middle East, specifically in Bahrain. For a man who has lost his home, his titles, and his dignity, the desert might offer something the damp fields of Norfolk never can. A fresh start far beyond the reach of the British press. But a move to Bahrain wouldn't just be a vacation, it would be a permanent defection. Sources claim that high-level discussions have already taken place regarding a consultancy role that would provide him with the lifestyle he feels he's owed, far away from the prying eyes of King Charles's security teams. This has sent shockwaves through the palace. If he leaves the country, the royal family loses their ability to monitor him. They lose their containment. The fear isn't just that he'll leave, it's about what he might take with him. Memories, documents, and secrets that the monarchy has spent decades trying to bury could suddenly become his only leverage in a world where he no longer has a royal checkbook to rely on. Even more shocking is the reported silent treatment coming from within his own household. Sarah Ferguson has famously been his ride or die for 30 years, but the move to the cramped quarters of Marsh Farm has exposed deep, irreparable cracks. Observers have noted that while Andrew is seen pacing the grounds of his new prison, Sarah has been spending more time in luxury hotels across Europe. Is the woman who stood by him through the Epstein scandal finally reaching her breaking point? If Sarah decides that the farmhouse is too small for two, Andrew will find himself in the most dangerous position of his life. An isolated man with nothing left to lose and everything to say. The timing of this potential great escape couldn't be worse for the crown. With King Charles focusing on a modern, streamlined monarchy, a rogue prince operating out of the Middle East is the ultimate PR nightmare. Every move Andrew makes at Marsh Farm is being scrutinized by a specialized team at Buckingham Palace, tasked with one single job: ensure he doesn't embarrass the institution again. But as the boxes remain half unpacked and the calls to Bahrain continue, it's becoming clear that the farmhouse was never the destination. It was the catalyst. And as we look closer at the final piece of this puzzle, it's not a question of if he will leave, but what explosive truth will be revealed the moment he finally crosses that border. The most humiliating detail of Andrew's new life isn't the smaller house. It's that he's become a tourist attraction on his own brother's estate. While he paces the halls of Marsh Farm in a state of self-imposed exile, King Charles's staff have reportedly updated the official Sandringham safari tours. Now, for the price of an afternoon tea ticket, royal fans are driven in Land Rovers directly past the rear of Andrew's new home. He went from being a protected, global diplomat to a curiosity for sightseers to spot through binoculars. This isn't just a loss of privacy, it's a deliberate, public stripping of the last shreds of his dignity, orchestrated by the very family he once led. But as the tourists snap their photos, a much deeper isolation is settling in. Sarah Ferguson, the woman who was his literal shadow for 3 decades, has effectively vanished. While Andrew was unloading boxes in Norfolk this April, Sarah was spotted thousands of miles away, hiding out in a secluded chalet in the Austrian Alps. The unbreakable bond that survived the Epstein files and the loss of Royal Lodge seems to have finally snapped under the weight of the Marsh Farm move. Without Sarah by his side to soften his image, Andrew is facing the reality that he is now truly alone in his prison of gold. The psychological toll of this abandonment is reportedly reaching a breaking point. Insiders suggest that the former prince has become obsessed with the no-fly zone above his property, frequently checking the security feeds for any sign of intrusion. He is a man waiting for a blow that has already landed. With his birthday arrest still casting a long legal shadow and a criminal investigation that could drag on for another year, the walls of Marsh Farm aren't just keeping the world out. They are keeping him trapped in a loop of his own past. Even more chilling are the rumors regarding his final Plan B. Sources close to the Sandringham estate whisper that the move to the farmhouse was never meant to be permanent. They claim the king has already prepared the paperwork for a more distant arrangement, one that would see Andrew quietly relocate to a private estate in the Middle East, far beyond the reach of the UK's safari tours and the prying eyes of the British public. If he takes that deal, he won't just be leaving a house, he'll be leaving the country he once represented forever. The story of the prince who lost everything is entering its final, most silent chapter. As the sun sets over the Norfolk marshes, the man who once lived at the heart of an empire is left with nothing but the sound of the wind and the distant hum of tourist Land Rovers. He is the first royal in modern history to be successfully deleted in real time. And as we look at the empty space he once occupied in the royal family, the final question isn't whether he can ever return. It's whether there will be anything left of his legacy to remember by the time the gates of Marsh Farm open again. The move to Marsh Farm isn't just the end of a residency. It's the final physical deletion of a royal life that once seemed untouchable. As the removal trucks finished their work this April, the image of Andrew standing behind a 2-meter high security fence in the Norfolk wind became the definitive portrait of a modern-day exile. He is no longer the Duke of York, no longer a prince, and as of this month, no longer even the housemate of his most loyal defender, Sarah Ferguson. The walls of Royal Lodge once offered him a shield of tradition, but the smaller, claustrophobic reality of Marsh Farm offers only silence. Whether this farmhouse is a temporary stop before a permanent departure to the Middle East or the final station in a long, cold withdrawal from public life, one thing is certain: the institution has moved on. The slimming down of the monarchy has claimed its most prominent casualty, and as the tourists in Sandringham drive past his new gates, they aren't looking at a royal. They're looking at a memory. In the end, the story of the prince who lost everything isn't about a house or a title. It's about the price of legacy and the brutal speed at which 1,000 years of history can turn its back on one of its own. But the question that remains is perhaps the most dangerous one of all. Now that he is truly alone, stripped of his roles and hidden behind a no-fly zone, what happens when the silence becomes too loud to bear? If you found this deep dive into the royal fallout fascinating, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more untold stories from behind the palace gates. What do you think? Is Marsh Farm a home or a high-security prison? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.